Welcome back to Old School Sports and our OOTP 23 playthrough of the Kansas City Royals. We are in the early stages of 2037. It's been an eventful offseason for the Royals. After winning a third title in the row, longtime superstar Bobby Witt Jr. retired. We have a lot of money to still spend in free agency. The issue is that the free agents who have been available this year haven't been all that enticing to us or have been at positions where we really don't need a lot of help. So we have improved our team with a couple of moves, but not through the free agent market. We did add right-handed reliever Kyle Smith, who we think can be a pretty good arm in our bullpen. We picked him up when we traded away corner outfielder Mike McNeil. So hoping that the 24-year-old Kyle Smith will be an important member of our bullpen for many seasons to come. And then we added a young left-hander in Omar Ganoa when we traded away starting pitcher Dan Keogh. So in both of those trades, we got a little bit younger. Like the fact that Ganoa is a lefty, love his personality, like the fact that he can start for us in a pinch, although I think he's going to be a much more effective reliever than starter. And we basically got the same starting rotation as last year coming back. So this is an area that I would like to do some work on. Pretty comfortable with Bryce Hillman, Caleb Lagerwell, and Eddie Chavera. Would like Marco Estrada, who had an excellent rookie year last year, to remain in the rotation. But our longtime ace, Ben Borgman, is in the final year of his contract. He's wrecked physically, and he's coming off of a pretty mediocre year, 5.34 ERA over 148-plus innings. So I want a little more insurance for Borgman. Right now we've got Ganoa who could start, which I don't feel great about. We've got Gabe Pryor, another lefty who could start, but I think he's more effective in the pen. Chris Rutledge could start for us in a pinch if we needed to, but would like another player who can start. And I think that if we can find a starter, that would potentially allow us to put Borgman in the bullpen. Now, making close $20 million a year, not optimal, but hopefully he'd be a little more productive out of the pen. I mean, you can see that he would if we just switch him to start him as a reliever. You can see his stuff is 55, movement 50, control is 70. If we force Borgman into a role as a reliever, you can see he becomes a 4-star pitcher at that point. With even more effective stuff, similar movement, similar control. But I think there is potential that he could be potentially serviceable out of the bullpen. And then obviously if we did have other issues, we could certainly move him into the rotation. The concern, and it's been this way all year, is that the starting pitchers available in the free agent market are not all that exciting. We like Jesus Bibbs as a pitcher. He was very effective when he pitched for us as a reliever. And he's been okay last year between the Dodgers and Toronto as a starter. But I don't love that third pitch being pretty mediocre. Certainly would consider bringing him on board, but I think there might be better options than him out there. Jorge Rodriguez, don't love the lack of movement. Fly ball pitcher, throws in the high 80s with 40 movement. Sounds like a lot of home runs, and you can see 21 in 85 and 2/3 innings last year. So that's just bringing on something similar to Dan Keogh, who we recently got rid of. So feel like we do need to still make some changes to potentially improve the pitching staff by bringing on another starter, even though we're happy with both of the relievers we have. The everyday players, it's really similar. We traded away McNeil, as I mentioned, which will open up a spot for Jorge Lebron in our loaded outfield. And we made a trade for Dave Urquiza, traded away a package of players for him. He's really kind of slotted into a utility infielder role with us. But given that our second baseman, Ernesto Laziosi, and our shortstop, not our shortstop, Tony Fonseca is durable, but Laziosi at second and Willie Flores at third base are both fragile and tend to get banged up. Although we view Urquiza as kind of a utility infielder, I think he's going to probably end up starting some significant games for us in the coming years at second base or third base. You can see he's a pretty solid defensive second or third baseman. He's acceptable if you have to play him at short for a short period of time. So like his versatility, and he's kind of an average-ish major league bat. So I think that that helps fill the gap in the infield from the departure of Bobby Witt Jr. But we've got money to spend. Don't love the free agents that are out there. So as far as pitchers, or in general, quite honestly, but pitching is our big need. So that means the other avenue that's kind of out there for us is to see who's on the trading block. And there actually are some pretty interesting pitchers on the trading block. Sergio Lopez is clearly the star of the crew. Three-time All-Star, really impressive profile. And over the course of his major league career has been a very effective pitcher with a 1.13 ERA plus, more impressively a 76 FIP minus. The issue is that he's wrecked physically. He is in the last year of his contract, making $20 million, so that's something we could easily take on. He's the high risk, high reward potential player. The issue is that the Twins are just looking for an insane amount for him. If we give our top prospect, Gilberto Romero, we also kind of have to throw in the second best prospect in our system, Rick Meza, to get the deal done for 1 year of a wrecked physically pitcher in their 30s. Even though this could very well be the last year we do this playthrough, since Bobby Witt Jr. is now retired, we're going for 4 in a row. So we're certainly going to play it through and see what happens. And that would encourage us to just kind of abandon the future and just bring on the best player possible. But I don't think that's really the right way to manage the sim. So as much as I'd like to have a high upside player like Lopez on the team, I don't think that's the right move to gut our farm system to bring him on board. So that leaves us with a few, you can see 3-star starting pitchers to consider. Jose Devora, nasty stuff. 3 brilliant pitches, 30 years old. He's making $24 million a year. His movement and his control are not great. You can see he's led the league in walks each of the last 2 seasons, while also giving up 25 and 30 home runs. But he would definitely be somebody to think about. We're going to have to give up a pretty good and important player to bring him on board, or a really good prospect to bring him on board. But he's definitely in the mix of players to consider. Dylan Lonergan is another pretty solid pitcher, 32 years old, making good money. Nice thing is that he's signed for the year after next also. Not incredible stuff, but good movement, acceptable control, extreme ground ball pitcher. Has been a pretty effective starter over the course of his major league career. You can see 1-time All-Star. Issue is that, again, they're looking for a pretty important member of our team today, or one of the top prospects in our system, which doesn't necessarily mean we shouldn't do it. But the price isn't cheap. Another option is Luis Ortiz. Fragile, which I don't love. But he's another guy who's certainly been an above-average starter over the course of his career. Led the league in wins once with the Giants. His contract is a lot more reasonable. He's a free agent after this year. And kind of what they're looking for from him is pretty similar to what they're looking for the other two guys. A pretty important major league player, or one of the handful of top prospects in our system. And the last option is, if I could click properly, Kumar Rocker, 37 years old, making a lot of money. Last year of his contract is normal as far as injury proneness, 3 above average pitches, solid stuff, great movement, acceptable control, extreme ground ball pitcher who throws in the mid-90s, and certainly over the course of his long career has been a little bit above average in terms of his statistics as a major league pitcher. Did win a Cy Young Award in 2030, and he's been an All-Star a couple of times. So, not a front of the rotation starter, but certainly an acceptable starter. The thing that I like most about Rocker is that the price for him is the cheapest. You can see there's definitely some big-time players that they're looking for, but they would also take some secondary prospects for him. So the cost to bring on Kumar Rocker would be a lot less significant than any of those other guys. And we've got the money to bring him on board. The question is whether we think that one of the other players is better. I don't love Ortiz and Lonergan simply because they're both fragile. I think they're good pitchers, and they've certainly produced a bit better than Rocker over the course of their careers. And then Jose Devora has also, over the course of his career, statistically been a better pitcher than Rocker. But I do worry a little bit about the below average control, below average movement. How often can his stuff make up for that? He is coming off a 9-17 year with a 5.38 ERA, and he's now 30 years old. So I think for the time being, I think I'm inclined to go and try to bring Rocker on board. Again, we don't need him to be a top of the rotation starter. If he slots in as a 4th or 5th starter for us with the skill he has, I think that's perfectly acceptable. He's in the last year of his contract, so it's not a long-term commitment, and it does help us get some benefit to all of this money that we have. And I do like the fact that the cost for him is not prohibitive. There probably will be an opportunity to add one of those other pitchers or someone similar to those other pitchers if we need to when we get into June and July. And if we've still got all of our key prospects available, we've got the opportunity to do that then also, because we'll still have the opportunity to take on some salary, I would think. And the cost for Rocker is so low compared to the others that I think we kind of have to do it. We're able to also get them to even keep 20% of his salary. And all we have to give up is shortstop Robbie Ruiz. 20-year-old. He's never played above rookie ball for us. Definitely doesn't profile as a major league hitter. He's got a respectable glove. Certainly could be a very useful utility infielder if he could hit a little bit. But I just question whether he's even going to hit enough to have that kind of role in the majors. So it's going to use up a good chunk of our money, but not all of it, to bring Rocker on board. As I talked about, I like the fact that he's normal injury proneness, extreme ground ball pitcher, shouldn't give up too many home runs. And he was still pretty effective last year at the age of 36, and it's only a 1-year commitment. So I think bringing him on board gives us a little bit of insurance for the back end of the rotation, potentially lets us move Borgman into the bullpen, and gives us a better chance to potentially win 4 championships in a row than we had before bringing him on board. So we're going to go ahead and complete the trade, and you can see as far as our money available that used up a big chunk of what we went into the off season with. Obviously, we've still got plenty of money left, and we've still got a few months till the season starts, but I think bringing on Rocker is probably going to be our big move for the time being. And looking at our team now with Kumar Rocker on board, kind of put it into the 6-man rotation, which we're going to be using during spring training. And Rocker actually slots in as our number 2 starter. I do think that ultimately we will probably move Borgman to the bullpen and keep the youngster Estrada as our 5th starter and a left-hander out of the starting rotation. But obviously, a lot can happen between now and the start of the season in about 3 months. So for the time being, the plan is probably to move Borgman into the bullpen, but that can certainly change. And as we get closer to the regular season, or actually closer to spring training, we are going to put a little bit extra aside for our draft budget, just to give us a little ability to maybe overbid on some players or pay above slot for some players who happen to slip in the draft next year. Still have plenty of money to potentially bring on free agents either over the next month or two, or bring on some salary when the season gets started. So don't think that that's going to be a big hurdle that's going to cause us major problems to have set a little bit aside for draft picks next year, or actually this year. And we've made it to February 19th and the start of spring training. So actually have a fair amount of battles for those final couple of spots in our pitching staff. We've probably got about 15 or 16 pitchers for 13 spots as spring training begins. And then with the infield, I think the big question is between Rich Alvarado, Billy Dominguez, and Dave Urquiza, which 2 of the 3 of them make the team. And then we've got a battle at backup catcher between Fuchs and Aguilar. I think barring injuries, our outfield, DH, first base are all kind of set with some of the best young hitters in baseball. But it will be interesting to see what transpires during spring training. Right now we've just got the 38 guys on our 40-man roster there. Certainly going to add some extra pitchers and some extra players there to get a look at as many players as possible and keep the workload to the pitchers reasonable, particularly over these first couple of weeks of spring training. Well, we've simmed ahead to March 13th and finally suffered the first serious injury of spring training. Juan Munoz, the 23-year-old that we picked up in the Rule 5 draft from the Dodgers, ruptured UCL, out for the season. You may remember this is a left-handed pitcher who we did not think was ready for the majors. Clearly, he's never even been above high A ball. The thought at the time was just, hey, if we have a bunch of injuries in spring training and he pitches lights out in spring training, maybe there's a chance he could be the last pitcher on our pitching staff. Hate to have this serious injury, which is going to keep him out for an entire year, but it does allow us to kind of retain the rights to him. We'll just put him on the IL, and a year from now he'll be our property, and we won't have to waste a 26-man, well, not waste, but spend a 26-man roster spot on him. Obviously not optimal that he is on the IL for us, but we'll get to take another look at him in spring training next year and see what he looks like and whether or not he can help us then. And the spring training games are over. No other significant injuries for the Royals. You can see we were 17-9 for whatever that is worth. Get a better view actually here just when we look at the standings. Angelo Velasquez was up there in stolen bases, and then Eddie Chavera and Kumar Rocker and Bryce Hillman, 3 of our starters, were pretty good in spring training. Hopefully that doesn't mean that they left it all out there on the diamond in spring training, and they'll bring something big up to the major club this year. We still have 37 guys on the spring training roster, so obviously a lot of cuts ahead of us in the coming days as we try to get these 18 pitchers down to 13 and 19 position players down to 13. So that is what we are going to focus on next. Well, we've got the position players down to 14, so one cut left to go. And not surprisingly, it's going to come down to Rich Alvarado, who's been a utility infielder for us for the past 4+ years. Billy Dominguez, who has been up and down between Omaha and Kansas City for the past few seasons. And then Dave Urquiza, who we traded for this past offseason. Urquiza is going to make the team, so it really comes down to are we going to keep up Dominguez or Alvarado? Just in some other moves, we did keep up Adam Fuchs, which meant that we sent Leo Aguilar down to AAA. So Fuchs is the backup catcher. And the other thing that we did, we traded away the young infielder Ramon Estrada, who we had picked up in the Rule 5 draft as an insurance policy. Like his glove, don't love his bat, but he was not going to make the team. And we got a 28-year-old reliever, Robert Ibanez, in return. Good personality, good guy to have in the minor league system. At least we got something for the pain, not really the pain, but for the fact that we took on Estrada in the Rule 5 draft last year. So now we got to figure out whether Alvarado or Dominguez is going to make the roster as our second utility infielder. And given that Alvarado still has option years, there was a part of me that thought about sending him down. But he's been pretty close to major league average quality hitter over the course of his career. He can play first and second base, good influence in the clubhouse. Dominguez, over the course of his career, which is just 3 parts of 3 seasons with us, hasn't been quite as good a hitter. He is more versatile defensively, not as good in the clubhouse. And he is actually out of options, so we're going to have to just waive and DFA him and hope that maybe he makes it through to AAA. But I think that's what we're going to do. Alvarado, I think, is a little bit better of a bat. And given that we have Urquiza, who's better than either of them defensively at second, third, and even short on the team now, the fact that Dominguez is a little more versatile than Alvarado defensively doesn't bother me all that much. I hope that nobody picks up Dominguez. I would love it if he makes it through to AAA, but we are going to waive him and move on. And we've got the 13 guys who are going to be breaking camp and headed up to Kansas City as far as our everyday players figured out. It's going to be Bolden, backed up by Fuchs at catcher, Ojeda at first, Laziosi at second, Flores at third, Fonseca at short. As we've talked about, Alvarado and Urquiza as the backups. The outfield, Angelo Velasquez in center, and then a lot of shifting to guarantee that all of these guys get playing times. Alex Vasquez is going to be playing right field against righties, DHing against lefties. Javi Medina is batting third and playing left field against right-handed pitchers, not in the lineup against lefties. Victor Avelar is going to be our DH against righties. And then, as we talked about, Velasquez in center field. Velasquez still in center field against lefties. But the left fielder against lefties is the youngster Jorge Lebron. And then Avelar moves from DH to right field. So going to try to get all of these players some at-bats. Want to make sure that we get LeBron decent playing time, given that we tried to open up that spot for him by moving on from Mike McNeil. We got him over 500 at-bats last year. You can see the only area where we think he still might have a gap is his eye and discipline. But he's also almost 25 years old, going to be 25 years old the first week of the season. So hopefully we can get him 300 at-bats as a starter against left-hander, a pinch runner, a substitute when we do inevitably have some injuries in the infield. Would like to get him, a few hundred at-bats this year, but I think that I think we're in pretty good shape. I don't think we have to force anything to guarantee that we get him more at bats than those that he's going to get organically, because we do know at some point during the season we'll have some injuries and he'll be in the lineup more regularly than it looks like he will be right now. And looking at what manager Bobby Crosby wants to do with the rotation, you can see he still wants Ben Borgman in as our third starter, and he wants the youngster from last year, Marco Estrada, in the bullpen. I would be inclined to let Crosby do what he wants, but you look at the other starting pitchers, everyone except Borgman had an ERA below 2 during spring training, and Borgman's was a 6. I think there is a risk that he's just done. I'm going to go with what Crosby says and keep him on a relatively short leash, which means that Estrada is going to be part of the bullpen when the season starts. But if Borgman, 3 or 4 games into the year, has a ERA of 5 or higher, I think we're going to just quickly make the decision to see what he can do out of the bullpen and move Marco Estrada back into the starting rotation. And these cuts with the pitching staff are definitely hard, which hopefully means we've got a pretty solid pitching staff. First cut is going to be the 23-year-old Alex Simmons. He's never been in the majors yet. Last year he split between AA and AAA, and he did have a 0 ERA in 9 innings pitched in AAA. Obviously a small sample size. Think he will be back up again with us soon, but he's one of the few players that still has options, so we are going to send him down for the time being, but there's no doubt that we'll be needing him at some point with some injuries. Presumably he'll be the first one called up. And the next cut's just as hard. Bob Williams, former third-round pick, who has been with us for over 5 years in the majors now. Been a pretty solid major league pitcher with a 1.11 ERA plus and an 85 FIP minus. Issue is he's got no option years left. I don't think he's as good as a pitcher at this point as 27-year-old Chris Rutledge, who's a lefty. He's also been pretty effective over the course of his major league career, 113 ERA plus, 84 FIP minus. Rutledge does have 3 option years left. I think I prefer to send Williams down, but he doesn't have options. So I'm going to see what I can get for Williams in a trade. If I can get something decent for Williams in a trade, I may just ship him off. If not, Rutledge will get caught in the numbers game, and presumably both Rutledge and Alex Simmons will be the first 2 pitchers that we would want to bring up if we do have some injuries. But let's see what we can get for Bob Williams, if anything. Mostly interested in prospects, quite honestly. And you can see there's not a ton out there. The only offer for him was Alfredo Estrada, a decent defensive center fielder who can't really hit, who's under contract at 18 to 24 million for the next 6 seasons. So certainly not going to do that if we look for some regulars in addition to prospects. Couple other players, Willie Ayala, reliever who doesn't know where the ball's going. Adrian Keys, reliever, don't really think he's any better than Williams. And then Melvin Padilla, closer from the Braves, but he's down in the minors right now. So not really excited about any of those options, quite honestly. I guess we could waive in DFA Williams to keep Rutledge on the team. I look at what they did, last year and the last few years with the team. Williams has had an ERA over 4 every year. He's a back end of the bullpen arm. I mean, he's a decent major league player, but he's nothing exceptional. Rutledge was better last year. He's a lefty. But right now, I think I'm going to not risk losing Williams. And we're going to demote Rutledge down to AAA. I don't think either of these guys is going to be the huge have a huge impact on our team, whether we have Williams or Rutledge in the middle relief. You can see Omar Ganoa. He's a guy that we did pick up in that trade for Dan Keogh. So we want to see what he can do at the major league level. 25-year-old. He is a player who does have options left. So if he's ineffective, we could certainly send him down and bring up one of those other two players, but wanted to see what one of our more important acquisitions through the offseason can do at the major league level. And then, as I talked about, Marco Estrada out of the pen for the time being. But if we have any injuries, or if Ben Borgman is ineffective in the early stage of the season, we'll be moving Estrada right back into the rotation. So one thing left to do before we conclude the episode and move on to the start of the 2037 season. Goal for the team is to win a championship and improve our defensive efficiency over the next 2 seasons. As we've talked about, what we're really doing is going for 4 in a row. Want to join the Yankees, who we lost to in the final game of spring training, as the only major league franchises with 4 or more World Series championships in a row. So it's World Series or bust this season for Kansas City. Before we finish off, we'll take a look at some preseason predictions, run a simulation, see what the Royals look like as we try to get back into the playoffs and try to repeat. And you can see that on paper, at least through this sim, we're still expected to have a pretty good team. 103 wins, which would be the best in the American League. And it would be the best in baseball. You can see some expectation that Jonathan Ojeda and Alex Vasquez have big offensive seasons. And Bryce Hillman potentially a big season as a pitcher. So would certainly love it if this team won 103 games. That would definitely put us in a nice position with home field advantage throughout the playoffs as we try to win 4 in a row. And we will find out how the season starts in our effort to get back into the playoffs and pursue the championship goes in our next episode. Until then, thanks so much for watching and hope you have a great day.